But I think the point to note is the question why people across the world, and particularly in Africa, are worried, is that the speech for an American president is kind of short on those indicators for global cooperation. And Ambassador Keshi has already talked about the Paris Climate Agreement and the fact that the whole world looks at America as the bastion of global cooperation, that country that leads, and we saw what happened in the first time of Trump, where he withdrew from the World Health Organization, withdrew from very important global agreements that served as the rallying point for the world to think about very key global concerns. And so when you look at this speech again and you see that, apart from the fact that it was short on poetry, it was uninspiring, and Professor Bolaji Akinyemi made this point very strongly yesterday. You also, see that whole America first and that sort of rabid nationalism that's kind of defined his first term is still, what is coming out to the fore. And in terms of how Africa responds, I agree absolutely that Africa should not grovel in terms of, because Africa has options now, and America actually recognizes that. America understands the fact that Africa is not just pandering to the West now. We have options, because in terms of infrastructural development, for example, we're looking towards the East, and we're engaging China. We're having discussions, and so that's why even the Prosper Africa initiative was not really the Trump presidency in the first term sitting down to say, okay, how do we cooperate with Africa? It was a containment policy, and that was why it was instructive that it was the national security advisor and not the Secretary of State that even had to put forward that announcement. So in terms of how Africa engages, I think this is where the whole philosophy around the non-alignment comes into play. The fact that we have to play to the middle, and I really like the fact that in the conduct of Nigeria's foreign policy under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it has not been a foreign policy that is narrow-minded or a single-track foreign policy. It has been more of diversifying our our engagements, looking towards China where we need to cooperate in terms of infrastructure, the Belt and Road Initiative, and all of that. And then, of course, in terms of bolstering our democracy, looking also to the West and cooperating where necessary. I think the other very critical point I would like to make is that the Trump presidency, when they say elections have consequences, I think the second coming of Trump also takes us to that point to analyze some of the developments that have come up since he was re-elected in November. For instance, you will notice that the social media companies, all of the executives were there at the inauguration yesterday, and then they are beginning to change policies which have implications for Africa, Africa's stability, Africa's democracy. You look at Meta, for example. Meta has ended its fact-checking program in response to the fact that some of these things Trump doesn't like them, and so it means that Africa has to be prepared for a lot more misinformation. Africa has to be prepared to combat the disinformation that will come on those platforms, and Africa has to grow its own indigenous initiatives to be able to combat those things and ensure that they do not also affect our governance system. Because even in the recent times, we have seen that even within the Sahel and West Africa, we have seen an upsurge in disinformation. We have seen foreign information manipulation and interference, taking the center stage in our own parts of the world. So, in terms of how we then try to navigate, we must be able to develop homegrown approaches to tackling this, and not just have this this whole understanding that it's America that will come and do it and do some of those things for us.
All right.